Hey podcast, what's up? Welcome to season 2, episode 5 of the Dari Hamra podcast show. Today I want to introduce a special guest who's a marketing and branding guru turned yoga and wellness instructor, from a fast-paced New York City lifestyle to a chill, laid-back lifestyle on the west coast of Mexico. Joshua Blair, who is a co-founder of the company Brandthumb, a marketing and advertising firm based out of Tampa, Florida, is one of today's experts and authorities in branding and advertising. Prior to creating his own company, Joshua started his career during a dot-com boom in California in the 90s and early 2000s, only to move to a fast-paced lifestyle working for one of the biggest brands like Disney, ESPN, Panasonic, Citi Bank, and Chase. What makes him unique is that despite all his successes, he has never lost sight of his true purpose, which is working for the things he believes in. One of his recent projects, which is honoring the Military Women Memorial and veterans by creating the hashtag appreciation, says it all. This is spelled APPRESHEATION. But before we get into the details of how this came about, I invite you to listen to his story, which is inspiring not only to me, but to a lot of men and women in our country. So let's just dive right in. I want you to introduce yourself to the audience and give people a little context as to what your expertise are, what you actually do today, and how you got there. And then I want you to talk about how it all led to that t-shirt that you're wearing called Appreciation, what that stands for, what that means not only to you, but to our society, and what your vision is for your future. So with that, I want to introduce Joshua Blair.
Thank you, Doctor. It's exciting to be here. I guess we should thank Steve for connecting us.
Absolutely. Big shout out.
Yeah, big shout out to Steve. A lot of people would debate whether or not I'm actually an expert or a guru in anything, and I'm willing to accept that. I'm kind of that guy that's just hung around and stayed in the game long enough to know a lot of smart people. And I believe someone told me the other day it was actually Aristotle or one of the Greek philosophers who essentially said smart people borrow, but really smart people steal. When I became a web developer, they told me good coders borrow, great coders steal. So I've learned not to reinvent the wheel. I don't call myself an expert in anything because I like to think I'm smart enough to know that I don't know everything. My career started out early out of the gate at Penn State. I left early to go to California to work for some internet startups back in the 90s during the dot-com boom, where you just had to have sort of 2 arms and 2 legs to get a job as a website person. When I went to Penn State the first time, there was no email for students. I actually did a tour in the Army and came back after my son was born, and everyone got an email address, and that was a game changer for me. So it was a bit of good timing, and I ended up working for several startups, one that was sold to Amazon. We actually were the #1 bookseller a few months before Amazon was, and worked my way back through to New York, where I ended up working for big brands like ESPN and Panasonic, brands people would know, Citi Bank and Chase. So I had a cool career in the sense that I've worked for the small, the big, and I also worked for an agency in between, which ultimately led to where I am now, working for a very small boutique agency. And our original intention was to get in and out on the branding side, help people with branding, and then let them take care of the marketing and communication. But we often get involved in that as well.
Mm-hmm. Now tell me, Joshua, today, now you've been in the branding business for over 20 years now, correct? And you work with some of the big companies. Now you have basically a company that you co-founded called Brandthumb, and also talk a little bit about how that came about. But before we do that, just give the audience an idea what branding means today, the importance of branding, and how branding has changed in the 20 years, given the advent of the internet, now the social media. You talked about email. Like, it's hard to believe that not too long ago, we didn't even have emails. And I remember when email came out, everybody was like making fun when I had an email, like, what do you need an email for? And and give us a little insight how technology has changed branding and marketing today compared to 20 years ago.
Yeah, well, I'll share a story from 1998 when I started working at a company in New York. They had just gotten email, I guess, within the year of me starting there, and I would actually get emails printed with handwritten answers back on them in the manila shotgun envelopes. So it's crazy to think about that. Branding now, we're focused heavily on purpose-driven branding. So we know that branding is more than a logo, and we talk about that a lot. A lot of people just say, oh, well, you make logos. No, I mean, yes and no. We do make logos, but we make logos in the service of the larger gestalt of the brand, which includes everything from customer service to the storefront, to if you're a retail business, if you're a B2B business, even your reps, everyone. One thing I thought was excellent branding at Disney/ESPN, my ID card had our principles and goals on it, talked about what the brand meant. ESPN wanted to be the leader in sports. At the time, we wanted to be number one in fantasy sports. And, they've done a good job. They compete with Yahoo mostly. Those types of things are your branding. Even every employee, we'll tie it into appreciation, can be part of a brand, can be part of a larger brand that has an identity. And we know millennials and zillennials especially are looking at the values of brands more than ever, and the corporate social responsibility piece. So we believe purpose-driven branding, you're not just the product you deliver, you're what you do in the community and how you impact the community in an environmental way in the production of your products, as well as how well you pay your employees, how you communicate that to your employees and the benefits, and how you communicate that outward to your potential customers as well, not just in an annual report.
Yeah, I like the fact that you mentioned that branding is not a logo. A lot of people, the layman, that's their definition of branding. They literally think it's just a logo or a name. I like the fact that you mentioned, what you basically said is your mission statement, your mission statement, your goal, your vision, your passion, what you stand for should be part of your brand. That's how we communicate. But can you unpack a little bit for us what branding actually means as far as like practically, and also the psychological effect of branding on the consumer? How does branding reach the consumer, and how does branding communicate with the consumer? Can you unpack that a little bit, just so for those who have a very layman's definition of what branding means, that they have a little bit more insight in that, so they understand what we're going to talk about?
Sure. Well, branding, a lot of people talk about what's your why, right? We hear that a lot. I mean, just like with the internet now and where we are, I talked about 1998 with emails, and when I got there, no one even had a website, for example. It just sort of recycles. What's your why, is a reiteration of your purpose, your mission, and all that stuff. I think that it's important to remember that your brand is your identity throughout. So we talk about brand identities. We don't just do logos. We do a style guide. We do brand positioning. We do brand communication. And I'll give you an example. During the pandemic, we came up with a brand from scratch, a company that operated under the name of Chocolate Inspirations. And I won't get into how we connected with them, but my partners took the lead on that, and they created a brand with this company called Happy by Chocolate. And the idea was, especially during the pandemic and however long that might last, and we didn't know, and it's still going on, depending on what you actually listen to, I suppose.
Where you live. Yeah.
Where you live. And we're not here to get into that, so we'll leave that alone. But we created a brand that allows people to share something that almost everyone likes, chocolate, and share a little happiness. And the packaging, I actually wish I had some here. You can write a little note on the back, which is kind of old school. But when you think about, even today, when you get a handwritten note or a card, it's still, even in a digital era, it has a little bit more. It's not personal. As easy to send a text. It's more personal. So I don't know if I'm answering your question, but this is the kind of branding that we do. It's not just another chocolate on the shelf. The idea of the brand is to make other people happy. It also happens to be a woman-owned business that we can show appreciation for. And we love working with minority and women-owned businesses and the smaller businesses because while they don't have big budgets, they do have dreams and aspirations, and we're able to help articulate those from a branding perspective. So the brand itself, as my partner Ernesto likes to say, can do the heavy lifting on the shelf. You don't have to do as much education if your branding is right, if your name makes sense. Happy by Chocolate is pretty clear. Right? What it is. It's not some name chocolate. So, you know, I'm the guy taking pictures of cars that are wrapped, vans that are wrapped, like cool names of companies. And I'm just looking like, what does this company do? And if it's XYZ construction, okay, you know what that is. But if it's Roto-Rooter, you know what they do. You can tell. That's good branding. You know, but if the name doesn't say it at all, and you have to spend a lot of money on your brand, like Yahoo and Google, nobody knew what they now we know. But those were unique names that required a different approach.
And how much of branding do you think is where do you draw the line? Like, at what point do you think it's overthinking, overdoing, and when do you just go with the actual product? And, you know, like, where do you draw the line there? Because you could like go really crazy with it.
Yeah, well, a lot of that's driven by budget, right? You know, and I come from a project management background. I was a PMP and Six Sigma yellow belt certified. So we always talk about the three legs of the stool. And you may have seen some of these memes about when your customer wants it cheaper and it's like a half finished course or the drawing. I saw one recently on Instagram that was pretty good. It was like when your client wants to cut the budget and, you know, you only have half of the horse. So, you know, then you can put the cart before the horse. There's often a chicken and egg thing. It's more art than science, but there's science involved. I'm a huge fan of focus groups and research. And a lot of people skip that. A lot of people choose not to invest in that. And then you find out later on, the name resonates a certain way with a certain part of your target, and it's no good. I think your question was where do you overthink it? And I have a saying that why guess when you can know? And often clients will say, I'd like to know, but I can't afford that. And so many people will roll the dice. So the challenge for us is often really making the case how important branding is, because it is hard to identify. What I remember from my executive IT management training at Columbia, which was for IT professionals, we talked about how on the balance sheet, Marlboro's brand, the mark itself, is worth billions of dollars, just the brand. And how do you explain that to a small business owner who thinks they have the best tasting, whatever it is?
Well,
and there's always another thing that tastes as good to someone else. There's always an alternative, if not a direct competitor. And I love that one said, well, we're the best, so we have no competition. No, that's not true. It's not even possible.
I think that the tricky part about that has to do with the emotional aspect that is associated with the brand. For example, you mentioned Marlboro or any big brand. Let's, for example, say Coca-Cola. Everybody knows what that means, or Starbucks. You know, you don't have to do anything. It's already a brand. Or Amazon. Everybody knows it. But what people don't realize, it took decades and half centuries for these big companies to become the brand and to have the brand recognition they have today. So like you said, someone might have even a better product, but They don't have a
We
brand.
see it all the time.
Right.
I'll give you a great example. Let me just jump in here real quick.
Yeah.
Do you go to McDonald's to get a great hamburger or cheeseburger? Of course not.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
You can get a better burger almost anywhere.
But it's the experience, the emotional association, the feeling you get when you go there. Maybe I call it nostalgia. I mean, the value of nostalgia to me is crazy how much money people pay on nostalgia today. Can you give us some example?
Yeah, Ronald McDonald is still like the most recognizable figure in America, like even more than LeBron James, if I'm not mistaken.
Are you kidding? Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's part of branding. Like that's a serious thing. The Ronald, and then we talked about the corporate social responsibility piece, the Ronald McDonald House. Yeah, all these brands have those things. The question is, I'm not questioning McDonald's intentions, but the legitimacy of those things, as you mentioned. So thank you for saying, like, if we're putting our money where our mouth is kind of thing. A lot of brands sort of, and I know from the inside, looking out, and I've been in those meetings, sometimes it's just to check the box. Or because the executive or chairperson's family has been touched by a certain thing, which is fine. But it's how genuine is it? But that's part of the brand, and people can tell. Yeah. I remember reading, I want to say maybe 2006 or 7, my first CSR report that ranked companies on their. It included everything: how well they treated their employees, what they did in the community. Those things matter, and those things matter more now than ever. And we're actually hanging our hat on that. If you go to my partner's LinkedIn, you'll see a cool video about him presenting down in Florida about the importance of purpose-driven branding, and we really believe in that.
Oh, what is his name? You want to share that with us?
John Gilmore.
John Gilmore,
my partner.
LinkedIn.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Now, Now, how does branding and marketing now connect? I know that it's two totally different things, and people get that often mixed up. Because it's two separate, almost like psychological and operational things, marketing and branding, but they go really hand in hand. Today, how do you see the, let's say, the top 3 avenues for marketing once you've established a brand? And let's say you are a recognized brand, like people know you exist, but you're still not out there. And how do you set yourself apart from the competition using smart marketing once you have a brand? And how do you today see the top 3 avenues of marketing compared to like 20 years ago?
Yeah, well, that's a big question. We normally charge a lot of money to answer. I would say this, that obviously social media is a critical component of what we always have called the mix, the marketing mix. And it depends on what you're marketing. I mean, you can be B2C, B2B.
Yep.
You can be nonprofit. And I think certainly social is the dominant space right now. And within that, Facebook is still massive. And people, YouTube, I teach social media at Penn State, and my friend Ryan Olahan came in from Google, and he was like, "Guys, don't sleep on YouTube." All the students were making presentations, and a lot of them didn't really include YouTube. Those channels are still very powerful, and I thought it was ironic because most of the students in the first class, when I said, "What's your favorite social media?" said YouTube. Like they spend all day on YouTube watching other people doing mundane things, and on YouTube you only pay if people see it. So that's a great model. There are other tools out there. We work with one called Famecast, which is an amplification platform for influencers. And influencers, we used influencers when I was in the beauty companies back in the 90s, where they're actually paying people sort of under the table, so to speak, to pretend like they love the products. And maybe they did, maybe they didn't, but that strategy is not new either. So
that's still today going on social media. It's the same thing. Yeah,
it's not a new strategy, but they're new tools.
Sure.
So in the 90s, we were talking about personalizing your web experience. Now we have it in more because the bandwidth is better and you're not logging into AOL and waiting half an hour.
I know. And it's interesting. You have all this technology today and I get literally calls and emails from our local magazines or some national magazines to advertise a half a page or a page for ridiculous amount of money. And I'm thinking, it's like there's no ROI in it. I mean, people that read this magazine, they're not in there, in my case, to do plastic surgery or cosmetic surgery. They read the magazine for various reasons. But today with social media, I feel we can do so much targeted. I mean, you mentioned Facebook. I mean, with paid advertisement, you can do so much. You can target the audience up to what color toothbrush they use. I mean, it's ridiculous. So why is it that people still pay big dollars for a magazine or a TV ad? I don't understand. Maybe you can explain that a little bit.
Well, I think it depends on, like, I just not knowing for sure, I would say it's not a good investment for you. However, if some of the companies that have the money, and we talked about the Cokes and the big guys, if you can be ubiquitous, no matter what, that's why these guys sponsor stadiums and golf tournaments. It has nothing to do with what they do. You know, I worked for Allegiant Airlines on a project we did at Brandthumb, and they got the rights to the stadium in Vegas. Their office is in Vegas. Is it a good investment for them? I guess we'll find out over time. But as long as people know what Allegiant is, that helps. And if it's perceived to be part of the most state-of-the-art NFL arena versus a place where you have to pay $3 for a bottle of water and extra for a couple inches of your seat, you know, that helps counter, you know, the perception of a cheaper brand, you know. And again, that's where branding and the confluence of the importance of wording and the right style of communication, you know, we can, how is it branded? How are you talking about your brand and where? So if people are reading those magazines, it might make sense. If your target's reading them, it may be worth the investment. It may be better than struggling to find the right campaign on social because it's so noisy there. Just like I talked about the sort of Back to the Future-ish, being able to write on the package of Happy by Chocolate, you know, with a Sharpie and say, hey, Daria, man, I love you. Thanks for having me on the show. Here's something that's a good idea. I'll send you some chocolate. But it's a tool that you can use for your brand.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I feel like today with the non-traditional branding, and when I say today non-traditional, I'm excluding social media because today we're having this podcast in 2021. I consider social media marketing traditional marketing for today, not talking about the past. If you don't talk about social media, I think with the old type of marketing, which is magazines or whatnot, radio, TV, which to me are overpriced, I think the more creative you get, the more personal you get, like with a card or chocolate, like you said, I think those are big winners. And because they touch people's heart, why is that? Because they don't expect that anymore. They don't see it as much. And whenever you give them the unexpected, I feel you make them feel special. And it's like sales marketing to me, it's all about transference of emotion. And the more personal you can touch someone's heart or feelings, I think the better off you are. How do you see that? Would you agree with that, or is it like completely off the?
No, I think that's absolutely right. There's a lot to unpack in there. I've talked about this in my classes too. First of all, you don't need to sell to everyone.
True.
Right. You need a small percentage of your target. Right. So one of the things we talk a lot about is you can have 1 million followers, but if none of them are buying anything, you know, it's, and when we talk about the fan amplification program, like the influencers, it's a headache for them if they can't sell anything or they don't know how. But yeah, the personal touch. So if you can get those advocates working for you, so in your case, you know, previous patients, people that are happy.
Storytelling. In my case, it's just storytelling.
If the narrative is, Dr. Hamra is a great guy and a great doctor as well, with the cool branding in the background of his podcast. Like, yeah, that's branding. That's your branding. It's essential. And I think people, they get caught up in just finishing stuff and doing it and not really thinking it through. In the prep, you gave me all those questions, and I was answering. I think one of them is like, what do you want people to know? But this stuff looks easy, but it's not. There's a lot of work that goes into it. And you think about the most successful brands, they're the simplest ones, like the Nike swoosh. It's a very simple logo. It's not just about the logo, but that logo evokes so much, whether you love it or hate it. Recently, with some of the things that happened, it's the simple one. And it reminds me of Mark Twain. And when I teach digital writing, his famous letter he talks about his famous letter to his friend, which was like 8 pages or whatever. And the last line is, "I'm sorry I didn't have time to write a shorter letter." Because precision is what matters. And we talked about branding, doing the right packaging and everything, doing the heavy lifting, so you don't have to pay for that education. Yeah, Coke and all those brands, but they invest a ton of money, even still, in advertising. Yeah. And you asked earlier about the difference between marketing and branding, and I'll throw in advertising. If you don't have a brand, you don't have anything to market.
Sure.
And there's no differentiation between your soda and the other soda.
And it's like, without marketing, you don't really have a brand, because how are you going to establish a brand without marketing, right? So, I mean, it's like you can't do one without the other. And
how do you justify the expense of branding? Yeah. When it's easy to track marketing, right? You talked about the personalization. You can track how many people see your marketing campaigns, but you can't always tell how many people see your brand. So, like, we recently did a campaign, and that ended up in Times Square. And it's hard to track the impact of that.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day is, like you said, how much ROI you get, how many customers you actually get from whatever that is that you do. And that's really what I think I myself, when I learned about all of this, it took me a while to grasp, because everything might sound like a great idea, but at the end of the day, is that bringing customer through the door? Yes or no? And different strategies work for different companies, for different brands. And that's another thing I learned, and I learned that mostly due to failures. And, I didn't have enough knowledge or enough expertise to know even who to hire or who to talk to. So I just did everything myself, and of course nothing worked. But when you do that, you learn a lot by doing so. And it's funny that I love talking to you about this, because I'm kind of obsessed about human psychology, and branding and marketing is pure human psychology. And every time I hear how that actually works, it just blows my mind, because you learn actually a lot about yourself. You mentioned the Nike swoosh. To me, there is nothing more nostalgic than the Nike swoosh. I mean, you could have 2 sneakers, they look identical. One has a Nike swoosh and one doesn't. You're drawn towards the Nike because you associate all these great athletes that are essentially influencers, that you feel like if you put one of the Nikes. I remember I played basketball when I was in high school, and when I put my Air Jordans on, I swear to God, I played better. It just brought more out of me, because it made me feel more special. And that's really, to me, what I'm fascinated about branding. And there's so much into it. But in these 20 years, now you have all this experience. Now, what is one thing you would have loved to know 20 years ago that you know today and apply every day? Like what is it? Like, there's always that one thing, and it's like, oh man, I wish I known this. Oh my God, I would have done so much better. I wouldn't have done all of these mistakes. What is that one thing, if you could pick one? I know there's a lot, but let's just narrow it down.
Well, I'm gonna touch on 2 and answer 2 questions at once, in part.
Oh, there you go.
For you. This is, I actually put some notes down, but I think when it comes to the first question, what would I want to know? I'd want to know that about my career, that it's not just about your career. It's not just about work, right? I was a single parent. And as I look back, staying late, going in early, taking the extra classes at Columbia and NYU. Yeah, well, I'd like to have some of that time back. I'd like to go to more of my son's games. I'd like to be home to help him with his homework. I was in a unique situation as a single parent. There are plenty now, and it's less taboo than it was. I actually kept it secret during job interviews, and it sort of drove a career path that was sort of sideways rather than up, because I didn't want to take on more responsibility. But instead, I had to work hard. I had to commute. I mean, with my commute, it was at least 12-hour days, 13-hour days. And I think that contributed over time to burnout. I ended up at 30 having a colonoscopy because I was stressed out, according to the doctor. And I would encourage people, if you can find something that you at least enjoy a little bit. And I, for the most part, enjoyed the people I worked with. I didn't always like the organizations or jobs that I had. And then the other piece of, I guess, advice, as who were mentors or who was important to me. There is a guy who taught me essentially like tell, don't ask, sort of, not so much ask for forgiveness rather than, get permission. But as a single parent, we had half days, Fridays, year round at this place I worked at. He was like, "Why are you here in the office?" And I was like, "Well, I had to be." And he kind of pulled me aside and said, "Listen, if you should be at home so you can spend more time with your son right away." And the net of his story to me was, as your boss, if you ask me if you can work at home, I'd have to then decide, do I give you permission? This is the 90s now. Do I give you permission? Then I got to think about what if other people ask me. But he said, wink, wink, if you tell me I'm going to be working at home on Fridays, I can either ignore that email, I can respond to it and say, okay. Or that way, if someone asks me where you are, I can say, well, he told me he's working at home, and no one's going to question it. So I kind of add to that my white privilege, which we can get into another time. It changed the game for me. I realized that I didn't have to ask permission for anything. I didn't have to say, is it okay if I work at home I would just say, hey, I'm going to be working at home today. Then what can they do? No, you have to come in. If they say that, then I would come in. But it never happened. No one ever said, no, we need you here. Even in the 90s, because I was the webmaster. That was my title. I had a cool title. But that I wish I had known that sooner in my career, because I was always like raised Catholic and asked permission and always feeling bad about if I was 5 minutes late. I was usually early. But so one, keep life in perspective. Being out of the country and having been fortunate enough to travel, no one here asked me what I do. No one asked me. No, if no one asked me, I asked them out of habit because I'm an American. Where do you work? Oh, I worked at ESPN. Oh, I was like a big brand name guy, right? I was always proud of that. And I realized it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah. Well, it's hard because when you're young and ambitious and you're all your life, when you were in school, you were being prepared for a quote unquote career, and you wanted to make your teachers proud, your parents proud. I mean, you cared more about making other people proud than actually caring about yourself. I think because you didn't have any other context and you didn't have what you have today, which is the one important thing called perspective. And it's hard, back then we make decisions, and I made the same mistakes. Based on the data we had, we made those decisions. So I used to beat myself up a lot about these things, like about mistakes that I've made in the past. I wish I'd known this. But what I came up today is that I made those decisions based on the data I had then. I didn't have the data I have today to make those decisions that I would do today. So therefore, looking into the future, I'm not going to overthink things. And one of the things that I've learned that I want to share with you and the audience is that everything I do today, I pretty much stay in the moment. I don't think about it too long. I don't make decisions today for in 2 years. It's more not emotional, but more, I guess, in a spiritual way, you would call it from the heart, basically what you want to do. What I think today in this moment is right. I just do it without worrying about whether it's a bad or good thing. And that's kind of like what I've learned, if I may share with you, like my lesson from what your experience actually taught me, because we all have that type of experience.
And I was fortunate to have that mentor. His name is Jerry Flass. And, if you're asking me to look back, I wish I had known that sooner. I'm glad I learned it when I did. I didn't quite apply it as much as I could have. And as you say, the jump from that to where I am now, I've learned that I have, the perspective, not just the perspective, but the peace of mind to accept I'm at where I am. And, I'm not doing things for other people, and I'm not worried about where I work and that kind of thing. It's not as important as the impact that I make. And my partners and I think feel the same way.
I don't know the reason, but I'm just guessing that's probably why you're where you are with that beautiful background and teaching yoga at the beach and having so many dogs. And is that the reason? Is there a connection? Is there a connection, or is it completely out of context?
No, I think it is who I am now. It's like, I was a single parent at 20. So now I'm kind of living in a little bit in reverse, right? A lot of people say, are you retired? I said, well, certainly not. But I have found sort of a groove between yoga, meditation, the serenity of being able to go to the beach and not be so focused on the what I was stuck in New York for that 25 years of just getting up, taking the commuter rail, taking the subway, and going to work and meetings, and where do you work? What do you do? Where it's just going on. Where'd you get your degree? All that fun stuff. I'm proud of every place I went to school: Penn State, NYU, and Columbia, no doubt. But it's no longer as important to me as it once was, and shedding that burden, if you will, has allowed me to sort of be more chill.
Yeah, that's fantastic, because I was going to ask you, what are the best resources that have helped you along the way? I could think of one, which is called life experience, but could you think of other resources that helped you along the way for maybe the younger audience and younger listeners to hear that, so that they can look out for it if they hear it one day, so they don't miss it?
Yeah, I mean, there are a few books I always recommend to people, and I can share some of those, but I think I've been practicing yoga for 25 years and teaching.
How'd you get into it, by the way?
That's a great story. I mentioned that I had these half-day Fridays at this place I work with Jerry. And what I would do is at the end of work, I would go, because my son was in school until like 3:00. I'd go to the basketball court at the local Jewish community center. And not only am I not Jewish, I'm not a very good basketball player, but there I was trying to be. And every day, I can't remember exactly what time, but somewhere in that time frame, these senior women would be going by to go to yoga. And they were just on me about, I was the only one in the gym just shooting by myself, pretending like I was making these long range threes. And eventually they dragged me in there. They all came out in mass and like literally dragged me in with the instructor. Yeah.
Wow.
Jihan Lopen, that was my instructor at the time. And I'll never forget how good I felt at the end of that first yoga session. And then I started going every Friday with them, and it was literally me and 65 plus. There was like 8 of them and me. And I got a lot of help from the teacher, and it changed everything. I stopped spraining my ankle when I was playing basketball. I played basketball until well into my 40s. And prior to a major injury that I had. But prior to that injury, the yoga really helped with that. And my life was kind of yoga, basketball, work, and trying to do my best to raise my son along the way. So yoga, That's how that happened. It was completely
Interesting.
random. And I continued with it. And I was fortunate that a lot of the places I worked, when I worked at the banks, especially Citi Bank and Chase, they had free yoga at lunchtime.
Wow.
So I would go. That made it much easier for me than it was weekends. And I would encourage anyone, whether it's yoga or some kind of, not like, I mean, weightlifting is fine, but something that also engages your focus and mind. Meditation has become a bigger component of my routine than it was before. Being able to sit still for even 10 minutes and clear your mind is a very important tool.
Yeah, that's something I'm struggling with. Yeah, that's something I'm struggling with. Yeah.
Yeah, and those are tools, and then there are, being able to do that changes everything. It really does. And I try not to be too hokey or mystical, but I'm definitely that guy. And I think the reason I have as many students as I have now is because I'm not Mr. Mystical insofar as, I'm not seeing auras and that kind of thing, but I can tell you that I can look at a person and tell if they can meditate or not. Like, you can tell people that are calm, and being calm allows you, I think you kind of reference making decisions with your gut and everything. There is something to be said for letting sort of the universe handle things. If you can clear your head, you can deal with things much better, including work and non-work. And I think that's where you at the beginning. It's like understanding that your life is not your work. You're not living to work, you're working to live. And then, at the end, like I'm getting older, I'm almost 50, but I know so many people my age that are just so stressed out. I don't even know where to start. America is sicker, fatter, obeser was the right word. My friend, Dr. Hernandez, was just down here. He's a doctor of physical therapy. And we were talking about the American paradox, where we have all these products that are fat-free and weight loss thing, and yet we're the most at risk, out of shape, most diabetes. And actually, branding and marketing is guilty of a lot of that. We mentioned Coke, we mentioned Pepsi.
Listen, any great tool, if it's not used correctly or applied correctly, it doesn't benefit anyone. I wouldn't go as far as demonizing marketing or branding just because if they're used for the wrong purpose, absolutely. You can sell poison to people and they would die. So that doesn't make it a bad thing. I feel like it goes all back to education. And one of the things that you mentioned, stress is one of the primary causes of weight gain, because it just physiologically turns your body into a different state. And yoga, relaxation, or any athletic activity. My meditation is playing music, like learning the guitar, playing piano, even driving to work. I have complete silence. I don't turn on the radio. I don't do anything. I don't make a phone call. I just drive, and all of a sudden these ideas come to me because my brain waves, they go in a complete different mode. So
that's why people get ideas in the shower.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right.
It's one of the few times you're still. Yeah. And you're kind of, your mind, you might be thinking,
there's no distraction, nothing. Yep.
Depends. I guess it depends on how your bathroom's set up and who else is in the house.
I think our society is getting to a tipping point where, coming from having TVs in every single room. I mean, you go to a hotel, there is a TV installed in the vanity mirror. I mean, it's crazy. Like, what do I need a TV in a vanity mirror for?
I haven't been watching much TV, and the disconnecting has helped me relax. Yeah. They say, I want to say something before we move in. You mentioned your stress, the other, and weight gain. The other thing is sleep.
Yep.
Lack of sleep, and you're a doctor,
100%,
you know this.
Yeah, 100%.
And between our devices, I have a buddy starting a business about protecting yourself from the radio wave. I mean, people sleep with their phones. It's tough because I was one of the guys involved with the initial testing of Google Glass, and it was it's a constant bombardment, and they talk about turn things off a certain sleep. My friend, I'll reference Dr. Hernandez yet again. He saw he was here on vacation, and people were begging him to evaluate them, and he pretty much said to me, Josh, that if I was really given strong advice, it would be get more sleep.
100%.
That's the way the body heals itself. That's the way he deals with pain. That's the way the body, and most Americans are sleep deprived for a variety of reasons, including their diet, including their lack of exercise or lack of meditation, lack of yoga, whatever it is, that paradox. And it's a vicious cycle. We're feeding it by not sleeping, not thinking about what we're eating, I'm blessed. I can go to the beach and, I can be in nature. You talk about the weight gain and then depression, being isolated, team sports and activities and yoga, pandemic rules aside, allow people to interact. Isolation is the number one driver of depression, I believe. I'm not a medical doctor, but if you're isolated and you're not sleeping and you're always on it's just a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, we're social animals. So as human beings, we're social animals. So the biggest cause of, there's physiologic responses as far as immune responses, as far as depression, and as far as weight gain. Isolation leads to all of those things. It's actually some people, use it as methods of torture. That's how well it's known. There's no doubt. But I love the fact that, I assume you're living a dream now based on where you are, what you do, where you came from. And, when I heard about you the first time, before even knowing you, I got inspired. I'm like, damn, this is something everybody talks about. This is something I dream of. And he's doing it. So kudos to that. And because a lot of people talk about stuff, including myself, but very few actually do it. And I think when you get to a point in your life where you see it's just not working out, the one thing to do is just to change it, whatever that is. And at some point, any change is good. And then you go from there instead of overthinking or pontificating. You talked about the people that influence you. What role in your life did parenting play? Whether it was good advice or whether it was actually bad advice, whether it was putting a chip on your shoulder, whether it was giving you confidence. I want to, just for also a little bit context, it's always important how we grew up to where we are now. Can you shed a little light in that, and how did that influence you and made you the person you are today? And how do you try to be a good parent to your son?
Yeah, question number 5, right? So I actually had my parents listed as number 1. You said 3, but I put them together. Their 50th anniversary is coming up, and wow, they're not perfect people, and they wouldn't say they were. I think they did a good job overall. We've had some debates over time about, in retrospect,
who doesn't?
things but they certainly gave me the proper mooring and the encouragement to figure things out on our own. Without nitpicking on some of their choices with the information they had at the time, as you say. Yeah. For example, we were paper boys and altar boys our whole kind of time, which really messed up our sleep patterns. And in retrospect, now with the research as it's known, you could argue that wasn't a great idea. However, it taught us to be industrious. It taught us to be entrepreneurs. It taught us to work. And for the longest time, I was obsessed with work. I was who my job was. I was the webmaster at Revlon. I was this guy at ESPN. That's who I was. And I was my son's dad. I was never my own guy. And that's what I'm learning now. So, and parenting for my son was different because I was a single parent, and he got big into the soccer. So I was a soccer dad. And life became pretty much work and his soccer. I wasn't the best about. He wasn't a greatest student, but he got into a great college and he managed to graduate on time, which I didn't do. And now he's playing semi-professional. I believe he played a little professional soccer, and he's I believe the director of coaching for the women at Downtown United Soccer in Manhattan.
Nice.
Which is quite an accomplishment for him. And I'll just add that for a brief time, he was the youngest Division II soccer coach, but COVID kind of messed that up at a small college in New York. I had a couple goals with him. One, make sure he graduated and went to college and stayed out of trouble and didn't, become a single parent at a young age. So that he didn't have to go through the same rigmarole that I did.
Yeah. And
certainly he's met and exceeded those expectations. And I think that was as much a team effort as anything else. Maybe we could say the child is father to the man. It's not the right context, but he certainly at 20 and 21 had a huge impact on how I chose to live my life. Right, being suddenly responsible for another human being at that age. When we know, again, I'll say you're a doctor, you probably know some of the statistics around when we believe the male brain is finished forming, like we're talking 30s or 40s. And I was, I'll never forget one time riding in the train to the city and a woman named Alma, who I would see all the time. And I've recently learned now that I'm in Mexico that Alma means soul. I thought it was pretty cool. She gave me one day I was having a tough day and she had it like it was like she was waiting for him. She handed me this paper on male brain development. And I was like, wow, this explains why I'm struggling with as a parent right now and interacting with my son over like a random issue. It has nothing to do with me or him. It was just the hormones and the way his brain's developing. It doesn't matter what was happening. He was going to have some kind of, at that moment, triggering reaction to something. And we made it through, but it was tough. It dominated my life for, even now he's 28. So I jokingly put retired single parent on my LinkedIn at some point, and everyone was like, what's that mean? I guess you're always a parent, but now I'm not driving into soccer games every weekend. And I tried to go see his games as an adult as much as I could, but it was a weird unmooring that, it's probably a topic for another show when you suddenly are doing all that. And then now it's totally different.
Yeah, I think as I can speak a parent of 3 boys, the one thing that no one gets prepared for, there is no school for it other than life, a practical school, which is called life, is parenting. Everything we know about parenting is what we were exposed to through our parents. And our parents didn't go to school for parenting. Their parents didn't go to school for parenting. So everything is completely anecdotal, based on religion, based on the society you grow up in, based on what others may or may not think, the influence from the outside. Everything is like outside influence. It's almost like people parent just so they look good in front of their neighbors, in front of their family, in front of their friends. And I feel that's the problem. And I try to detach myself completely from that, what I call judgment. And I think judgment is a big issue where a lot of parents are suffering and kind of channeling their children into the wrong direction and making them suffer and then themselves suffer as a result. And that's the one thing that I feel that where parenting comes short and our society has to do a better job. So I think these things have to be part of a formal education, just like when we spend so many years in high school, college, and none of us teach anything about that. There should be a parenting class. There should be a life lesson. I mean, there should be classes that we can use as practical advice and tool to go through life without suffering, because as we know, no money in the world matters if you're stressed. No money in the world matters if you can't have a relationship with your children where you feel resentment or you feel resented. I mean, all of those things, I feel as a society, we still are in the early stages of the evolution.
Oh, well, absolutely. And I've done my fair share of studying shame and researching shame-based systems. And a lot of the older parenting systems are built upon shame and shaming the kids into, you don't love me, or this is disrespectful. And now what I've learned from knowing the way the male brain develops now has nothing to do with disrespect or anything else. The absent-minded boys are just going to do stuff. They're going to fling poop at each other. They're going to do weird stuff. They're not doing it, as an FU parents. They're just being kids. Now, I'm not saying boys will be boys, and that's a catch-all excuse for bad behavior. I want to be clear. And for girls too, and we talked about everything: the stress, the sleep, the social media, the device. My wife and I are apart now. Sometimes texting is an issue. Like, oh, you didn't get back. I didn't get the signal. I didn't get the message. You and I have it. The phones. I'm in Mexico. It's like we have to learn to just relax, man. I mean, everybody's and kids are down. Shit rolls downhill. So the kids. Yeah. And let's just throw in one more thing on top of that. Before you give me the hook, I go to a place with a guru here, and she talks about it takes 7 generations for shame to work its way out of a family system.
Really?
So, if that's true, I'm not saying it is, but it certainly takes more than 1 generation, right? I'm only now recognizing why certain family members acted certain ways over time. Like, okay, well, no, now this makes sense. Well, there was some abuse, or there was this or that. Even if it was just psychological, that can be worse than it just. There's so much going on everywhere for everyone. So when someone gets in the elevator with you and they look pissed off, it may have nothing to do with you. It could be, the bus sprayed them with water and they had to change their clothes before they went to work that day. And they came back and their kid spilled milk and their cereal all over the floor and they missed their train. Who knows?
Yeah.
And then those things conflict because we're all on edge. Then that blows up and we're not talking about even what's going on.
I know. And I feel like the past year for me, as bad as the pandemic was, and there's no way you can put a positive spin on the pandemic where millions of people died. But I could speak what it did for me. It gave me time to take a step back for the way I'm living my life. To rethink things, to have more time, to simply give me time to meditate, just sit and not do anything, but rethink my ways and do the things that I never had time for. And it helped me get great perspective about my past, but also my future. So for you, if I would ask you, what did last year, when we were in the midst of the pandemic, what did you learn? What did you take out of it? How did you grow from that?
Sure. And I can tie up several topics into that answer, that kind of the themes that we've already talked about. Just from a timing perspective, I went to India to finish my yoga teacher training at the behest of my teacher, Erica Kaufman, who encouraged me to go, and I didn't really want to go. For a couple of reasons. Well, it was not a cheap trip for one. And it also was, taking time. It was over the holiday. It was over Christmas and New Year's.
Got it.
Would have been, away from the family, that kind of thing. And I was scared to be a yoga teacher, right? I enjoyed practicing yoga, but I didn't feel, because I still can't do many of the poses, technically by the book. But what I ended up learning in India and through Erica and my fellow students is that, yoga it's your own practice. It's always your own practice, no matter whether you're with other people. I had yoga on the beach last night, and we had people of all different skill sets, yoga teachers who can do crazy, cool, even pretzelish stuff, it's another topic. Pretzel yoga is a very Western thing. In India, we studied more about let's call it the spiritual aspect, but more focusing on connecting your breath and being at peace and focusing on that versus technically being in the right poses. So the pandemic, I did that right before, not knowing the pandemic was coming. But guess what? I came back from India and went with my current wife to the Philippines to talk about appreciation, where I was fresh off the trip from India. So I got to teach yoga in the Philippines, which was cool. And again, I never intended to teach. She got me on you'll deepen your own practice if you study it, and you'll be better off, and so on and so forth. But she kept saying, you'll be a great teacher. So I got to teach there. And then, yes, like you said, it really, because of COVID, I had much more time to go inward. I didn't have to I hadn't been going to an office. We were virtual for a while, but it just put a pause, as you described. And as it turned out, I ended up spending so much time with my current wife. We ended up getting married during the pandemic.
Congrats.
Because we were essentially isolated together, and we ended up not, hating each other and loving each other and getting along so well. We ended up getting married in Arizona, in Sedona.
Nice,
with the shaman and the whole 9 yards.
Beautiful.
And but she's also a certified Reiki teacher and a certified Feng Shui master.
Wow.
And so she's also was supportive of that and encouraged me that if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be teaching here. And she's the one that facilitated and started inviting people and encouraging me. I started teaching yoga at the Airbnb here. And we end up with a group as many as 20 people on the beach a couple times a week. And so that was helpful. And being in a place as stand out as this really did help me deepen my practice and my connection with myself, which had for so long been, I was known as Travis's dad to most people. I wasn't me. And that's not, it's a compliment, but when I go I go back to New York, where most people, oh, that's Travis's dad, or this is, I was introduced by people who've known me here, the Travis's dad. And that's,
excuse me, I have a name.
Yeah. Or, to make the point, I was less focused on myself.
Sure. Yeah.
And because I was also paranoid, thanks to my Catholic upbringing, about not being selfish, about always volunteering. And I grew up working and volunteering, like with school. I was the class president. I was the diocesan youth council rep. I was an altar boy, Boy Scout, all that stuff. Always busy, always doing something, but always
giving,
involved in something. Yeah, definitely. And I read a great book, which is one I encourage for everyone, Give and Take. And in Give and Take, it was easy. He talked about the importance of, it's okay to take a little once in a while, even if you're a giver, or to ask for something. And I started to do that a little bit more for myself. And I stopped only focusing on others. And I realized through meditation that I never really thought about what I wanted. Yeah. I was just sort of doing what I thought.
Pleasing others.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, do you remember Gladiator?
Yes, of course.
Matt, his servant, when he says, like, what's it like? He says, sometimes I do what I want to do. Most of the time I do what I have to do. And that, I'm not sure I'm getting the quote right, but that line stuck with me. I always felt like, and people are going to look and say, okay, Josh, you do this, you golf, you do. Yeah, sure. Curated social media. It looks like I'm living life, my whole life. Yeah. Right. But nobody sees, what's going on. I won't even go with all the things that the VA has diagnosed me with. So I'm dealing with a ton of issues all the time. And to your point about the pandemic, at the end of the pandemic, I came out with an awesome wife, 2 really cool dogs who unfortunately you heard barking here because the yoga
that's right. I'm a dog guy, so
have shown up. Yeah, we got a pug and a corgidor. Nice. And then of course, the community we built here in a short period of time in with around the yoga and meditation. We have yoga and then we do potluck, and people bring authentic dishes for them and we share. Beautiful. And people say things like, oh, this is my respite for the week. I mean, here in Mexico, they work 6 days a week. I don't know if they get a real vacation or not. It's sort of mind blowing. I thought we had it tough, but
well, it's a lot of societies about survival also, and it's a survival thing. That
did I answer your question?
Yeah, no, it was I kind of expected it, but I didn't. It's kind of interesting that how we start focusing on the important stuff as soon as we have a little bit of time for ourselves, like you said, most people, they do things to make other people happy and rarely do things to make themselves happy, whether it's due to religious beliefs, whether it's through societal pressure, whether it's due they work for someone that requires that of them. So it's kind of sad, but at the same time, it's a good reason to change and to shift gear for those ones to struggle. It's just if only people knew that there is a will, there is a way. And, talking about Nike, that's one of my favorite slogans, just do it. Sometimes you just got to do it. And
Yeah.
otherwise you won't get out of whatever situation you're in. Last question, my friend. If you had, I always ask that everyone, if you had all the money in the world, what would you do if you're not doing it already, and why?
Yeah. So the answer right now would be I would make sure that I would take the money and I would buy as many appreciation shirts as I could, and certainly I give them to guys like you who have shown appreciation for your wife, and you may have noticed we reposted that.
I appreciate that shout out, by the way.
Yeah, and I don't know if you actually added it. I'd love to ask you right here and put you under pressure on the show to add the hashtag appreciation to that if you didn't.
If I didn't, I will have to go check back. It was.
And then, yeah, so I want to get everybody an appreciation shirt, especially the women who served in the military. That's the campaign we're working on now that went to Times Square, which I'm all heads down on. And then, I talked about being a single parent. If I really had just so much money, other than investing in small minority businesses, which is something that I hope we will do eventually, create a fund for women and minority owned businesses to help them with their branding, things that we know, help them with their branding and PR. These are things that they can't afford typically, but I always wanted to, I've done some charity work with the Bone Marrow Donor Registry and some other things. I've always volunteered as a coach. I'm working with the local basketball team here now by teaching them yoga, which is cool. We're planning on opening a wellness center down here that includes yoga and Reiki and pain prevention and management. But in the US, I would love to create some kind of foundation. I still can't figure out how to do it, but to help single dads, especially the guys that may have been in and out of prison or whatever. I think I've seen in some communities where these guys are just, no matter what, there's like no forgiveness and they can't reconnect with their kids. And it's a tough thing to watch. I have some friends where the mothers don't let them see the kids, even when they want to, even when they're doing okay. It's a hard one. I don't know if I could I certainly can't solve that riddle, but that's something that I was lucky. My son and I were lucky that I was in a position of good fortune and privilege enough to be able to get him into some good school and live where we lived and have the jobs that I had with the benefits that I had. And most people don't have that. So if there's any way I could address that issue, that would be one that's close to my heart.
I think, yeah, absolutely. And I think what's most important in life is meaning, having a meaning in what you do. And that's exactly, I love the fact that the appreciation campaign is something that when I heard about it, the first thing that came to my mind was like, wow, because here's a dude appreciating women, because normally men stand up for men, women stand up for women. There's all these women groups. It's almost like everybody's segregating themselves and no one is giving each other credit or kudos. And here is a dude appreciating women and basically making it part of his life, giving women recognition they deserve and they haven't had in, forget about decades, I'm talking about centuries and thousands of years for that matter. And yet we were all of us, whether men or women or whatever gender you are, we were all born by women. And I told you the story when my wife gave birth to our child a year ago. And that reminded me of how much more credit women deserve, whether they give birth, whether they are veterans and go and fight for their country, whether they fight for anybody's rights, or whether they're in a church, whether they teach, whether I've met women, they sacrificed their own lives just so their children can eat.
Sure.
I don't know if you compare it, how many men would do that. And from an evolutionary biology standpoint, I could tell you probably more women, not only probably, most certainly more women. And that's a fact. So just to close out, because what you're doing is very near and dear to me, touches me very deeply, just because I experienced it personally through my personal foundation called Alegria, which we go to South America, Colombia, and do cleft lip and palate work for a lot of these children. But here's what I didn't know when we started doing this. When I went there, I would say 80% of these families, there were single moms. There were single moms that had no education. Their breadwinner, which was the husband, left once the child was born with a deformity. Whether they were scared, whether they thought their wife is some sort of witch, that's why their child was born, just lack of education. And there's these women with multiple children that are disabled, no job, no work, no education, nothing, basically on the street, trying just to survive. So there was a story of this mother that came with her children, and two of them had cleft lip and palate, and one of them was newborn, the other one was 3, and the third child was 5 years old. So we do the surgery of the two children, and then when it was time to discharge them, I go to the recovery room. I just give the instructions to the nurse to translate to the mother that she needs to give her children these prescriptions, which were antibiotics, just to make sure they don't get an infection, that the surgery went well, everything went well, the child is going to have a great development, is going to be normal and all that stuff. And she started crying, not crying, actually bawling. And I thought the nurse translated it something by mistake. I said, no, tell her everything went well. And she said, no, she's crying for something else. I'm like, what is she crying for? She said, well, she can't afford the antibiotics. She's afraid that her children might die because she can't get the antibiotics. I'm like, what do you mean? Well, how much do the antibiotic cost? And back then, and translated in Colombian to US dollars, it was like, for all the medicine that she had to get, it was like $2.40, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, you got to be kidding. So look, why don't we just give it to them? And what's her story? She said, well, she actually, she had no money left, so she couldn't even get a cab or a bus or nothing. So she had a canoe. She paddled in the canoe 8 hours upstream through the Magdalena River just to get to us, just hoping that we would see her, because she had heard that there's a team from the US doing these things. She was just hoping that we could help her children. So she spent all her money on just buying formula for her baby, and she didn't have herself anything to eat other than water for a whole week. But she didn't tell anybody because
Right.
she was embarrassed, and she didn't even want her children to know. So when you hear stories like that, it's and then you hear how we as a society, as a developed country, fail to acknowledge, and gender equality is like this topic that people talk about for political reason rather than actually do anything about it. It's almost it's sad to call ourselves human beings because it goes against human nature. And so I just wanted to give you the biggest shout out that I've given anyone for what you do. And I promise you I will hashtag appreciation in any post that involves any female gender, because what they deserve, and because that's the only way I can help raise awareness. And if you ever want to do any charity work in the US, one of the things that I've been thinking about is to help women of domestic violence that were disabled due to any facial injuries. to help them to regain their self-esteem and confidence back and to start a new life, which is a small part in their psychological damage that was created. But, that's the only part I can play. So if there's anything in that regard, you have my phone number.
Yeah, well, I think what you're doing is awesome, and I want to invite you to come down here, and I'll give you the info. They do something.
I already took you up on that invitation.
And then I guess before we go, I think you hit the nail on the head, and I'm surprised at how much we've struggled with appreciation with the bigger brands. Everyone has said great idea, but it doesn't fit in with our, which is mind blowing. So if any of your listeners, friends, or followers are at a place that could leverage and deploy this, we don't want to keep this for ourselves, right? I mean, we own the trademark, but we want nonprofits to use it. We want people to engage with it. We want people to create ways to use appreciation, especially for men, to show appreciation for women, the women they work with, the women and the women who served. And it's been a challenge. It's hard to get, and maybe it's a topic for another show, but why are guys so hesitant to wear the shirt? Why are guys hesitant to tag? You wouldn't believe how many people we've asked.
Because it's a macho thing. It's a macho thing. It's people think showing vulnerability is a sign of weakness, but being vulnerable is actually a sign of strength. And that's the main reason.
Yeah. Brene Brown me up all night long. I mean, that's right. I mean, tough guys are actually very vulnerable. Yeah. And I think it's Nelson Mandela who said, it's not people without fear who are the heroes. It's the people who overcome those fears.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Thank you, Josh.
I'll leave you with the Mandela quote.
I love that. I love that. And thank you so much, my friend. And I can't wait to come and visit you. And I would love to chat with you more about all kinds of stuff. And thank you so much for taking time. I know you have a yoga class to attend, and I appreciate you making time. It means a lot to me. And big shout out to our mutual friend, Steve Seidel, for introducing amazing people like yourself to me. And thank you so much, and have a good night, my friend.
You too, man. Take care. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, buddy. Bye-bye. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Joshua Blair, and please don't forget to leave me a review on iTunes, podcasts, Spotify, or any other outlets that you listen to. And also, one more favor, do not forget to include the hashtag appreciation, spelled APPRESHEATION, in any post that involves the women that you love, whether it's your mother, whether it's your sister, whether it's your aunt, whether it's your wife, whether it's your girlfriend. I don't care who that is. Appreciate the women. Thank you.